You asked for more architectural doodles, so in today's video, that's exactly what we're doing, turning arches, doorways, and buttresses into little lines and squiggles. Hey gang, what's up? My name is Shayda. So you want to do some more architectural doodles? I've had so many requests. Let's talk supplies really quick. If you want to doodle buildings, you really need graph paper. That's the most important thing. Pencil and eraser and a fine liner goes without saying, but the graph paper is the main thing. Then in order to transfer our image, we're going to be using tracing paper and graphite transfer paper, and we'll go over all the details of that later. But let's get started with our pencil and our graph paper. Now, before we get started, I just wanted to let you know that I've created some worksheets to help you with your little building doodles. All my tricks and tips are on these sheets, and you can grab them on Patreon. It's part of the bonus content that we give every week over there, so check it out after today's video. The first thing we need to do is pull up a picture of the building that we're going to doodle, and I'm using the Taj Mahal as my example today. So my first step is always to kind of decide how many squares on the graph paper I'm going to use. And for this one, my main building is going to be 7 squares on the grid. I've marked that out. I've kind of got my foundation here. Then I want to go up one, and each little archway that you see there is going to be 1 square in height. So I really use the graph paper to help with symmetry, but also with scale and balance. Like if this window is 1 square high, then this one will be as well. And you can see me blocking out the windows, or the archways that are above the lower tier or lower arches. And then in the middle, I've left 3 squares open for that sort of larger part right in the center. So I really use the graph paper to my advantage. And don't forget, you're doing this in pencil. If something looks like it's a little too large compared to something else, you can always start again. Next, we're going to do my favorite thing when it comes to architectural doodles, and that is to turn all these beautiful architectural forms like arches and buttresses and molding into little lines and squiggles. So you can see I've added a bunch of horizontal and vertical lines. Then I'm adding that large dome, and the graph paper helps with that as well. It helps me to keep that dome kind of even and balanced, because circles can be hard to draw. And I've added all these lines to indicate that there is molding there, that there's more details, but that we really can't get into that because this is just a tiny little doodle. And then once again, the graph paper is helping me as I draw in these smaller domes, because I'm able to say, okay, the top of those domes should end right where the other dome is starting, and that kind of thing. So you're constantly checking in with the size of every part of the building. Now that we've captured the main building on paper, our next step is to kind of move outward and see if there's anything else that we want to draw. At this point, you could add trees, a road. I'm going to capture these 2 towers. I know there's more, but I'm only going to move out so far from the main building, so I'm just doing the 2. And again, I'm using the graph paper to help me balance the scale and size of everything. Now that our little pencil rough sketch is done, you can go ahead and grab a fine liner. I'm using the Derwent graphic line marker for this, and we're going to go over everything in pen. Now this is a chance to really refine your doodle. So first of all, you're working in pencil on the graph to make sure that you've got the symmetry, the balance, the scale, the size, and enough of the little details. At this point, you really want to, make sure everything is straight, make sure the windows or arches are all the same size, within reason. It does not have to be perfect. In fact, it should be very imperfect. Mine definitely is. Mine is very crooked. It might not look like it, but it is. And then as you go over it in pen, if you want to add more details like the water in front or like trees or anything, now's the time to do that too. And with that done, we're going to grab our tracing paper and we are going to further refine our doodle, our drawing. I say this all the time on the channel, but tracing your work is so important. It's such a great step for any artist to have because it allows you to refine. It allows you to change what you don't like about your drawing while keeping what you do. So if one of those arches is really uneven, tracing is like the perfect time to say, oh, I could just easily make that a little bit bigger. You can move the tracing paper to capture something and move it around, and you'll actually see me do that in a minute here. So tracing is a valuable step for a number of reasons. Actually, the towers on the end, I thought they were just a little too far out, so you can see how easy it is for me to move the tracing paper over and then I trace them. So I get to keep my little drawing, but I can, make sure everything is exactly where I want it to be and exactly the size I want it to be, and that's super important for these architecture doodles. Okay, our trace is done, and the trace is also important because this is how we're going to transfer our doodle off of the graph paper and into our sketchbook or onto your good copy paper. I've just sandwiched the graphite transfer paper in between my trace and my sketchbook, dark side down, and then using a sharp pencil, like a mechanical pencil, you're going to trace over the image one more time. You're really getting to know that doodle by this point. And that's what it looks like when you remove the graphite paper. There's a nice light transfer there. You can grab a fine liner, a Pigma Micron is good for this, a smaller nib like the O2. I think you'll find you want a smaller nib size. And we're just going to carefully go over the entire drawing, and don't let this part stress you out. The idea here is not perfection. Yes, you want to use the graph paper to make sure that the scale and symmetry are at least sort of, heading in a good direction, but everything about this is supposed to be whimsical, a little bit silly. Frankly, we've turned all of these key features into little squiggles and lines, and that's kind of the magic of these little doodles, I think. One tip when you are coloring in arches or windows or what have you, do not black them out entirely. Blacking out a window or arch, it just makes it look heavy and dead. You want your windows or arches looking lively, so just do some light line shading and go a little heavier with the line shading on one side of the window. I'm doing the right-hand side, and that just gives a nice look, a nice natural look. Another tip when you're going over everything with your fine liner and you're doing your good copy is to pull the pen towards your body. When you're moving the pen towards you or back in towards yourself, it's easier to keep it steady. So that's something I do. And just continue to add a little bit of line shading wherever you think you need it. That extra line shading can really help make the doodle appear so detailed when really you've skipped most of the detail and turned it all into little lines and squiggles. But that is looking pretty good. I'm very happy with my little mini Taj Mahal doodle. And now that we've gone over some of the tips and tricks for these little building doodles, I thought let's just do a couple more together quickly so that you can see my process every time, and hopefully you'll feel like you understand how to do just about any building that is in your life. So I'm drawing Big Ben. You can see me starting on graph paper again. This is really simple. The graph paper helps me create these sections at the bottom of the tower. I know the clock area needs to be just a little bit wider, so the graph paper helps me to, to achieve that, give that a little bit of extra bulk around the clock. And as usual, all those many details, like in this case, windows and arches and everything is just turned into lines, and it's all vertical lines for Big Ben. And I'm able to capture that even further when I go over it with my graph paper, going over it in pen. So I've refined it twice now. First, I do it with pencil, then we refine it by going over it in pen, then we refine the image by tracing it. And we've just got all these many details, but it really is just a lot of lines. I am taping this in my sketchbook using a little bit of washi tape. And then I am going over it in order to transfer it using my nice sharp mechanical pencil. The transfer is quite light, but it's definitely there and it's easy enough to see. Again, I'm going over this with my Pigma Micron, the 02 nib, so a fairly small nib, and just adding tons and tons of line detail. I'll do the clock, and for the numbers, again, just lines. Okay, you get it, lots of lines. And that's it. Big Ben is looking cute. We're going to do a really simple one last. I thought it would be fun to do the Pantheon, and for this one, you want to give yourself a center line. Since it has this triangle peak, this peaked roof, we want to make sure we know where center is. I'm also doing a number of columns right in the front, and the graph paper is going to help me with that. So we're just blocking it out in pencil, and once you're happy with the rough sketch on graph paper, you feel like things look, to scale and look fairly balanced and symmetrical, then we begin to refine the image using pen. You can go over it and change little things, add line detail, trace it to refine it further, and to transfer it into your sketchbook. So tape it in with a bit of tape, sandwich that graphite transfer paper underneath, and there is your transfer. And then by the time you're going over it with fine liner in your sketchbook, you are going to know this doodle so well, like you've drawn it 3 or 4 times now. So even though there is always that little bit of stress, like you want to get it right when you're doing the good copy, I think your hand is going to know the drawing so well that it's really hard to mess up. And plus, if you make a little mistake, just add some more line shading and cover it up. That's my trick for everything today, line shading. Just throw some more lines on it, some squiggles, some dots. I mean, that's what makes doodles so much fun. You can play, you can add that touch of whimsy, and nothing needs to be perfect. And there we go. Our architecture doodles are all done. I love this little sketchbook page. I think it's a lot of fun to create, and I hope that you will give these a try. Draw the ones you saw in today's video, and then move on to some of your own, places you've always wanted to go, places you have been. And when you share on social, make sure to tag me using hashtag #ShaydaMadeMeDrawIt. Okay, if you need the worksheet, if that would be helpful, head over to my Patreon site. All the channel bonus content starts at just a couple bucks a month. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you soon with a new tutorial.